Hi everyone, this is Gary. You're watching a tutorial on Connect 4. In this segment we're going to cover the best traps, or what I think the best traps are. These are my favorite traps. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you three conceptual examples where I circle how I like to set up traps on the board, just to give you an idea of how you should be thinking in terms of setting up these traps. And then we're going to walk through a live in-game example, and I'm going to show you how I would apply this situation in a particular game. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the concept. I've circled one attack line here. I've also circled another one. Now if you'll notice the green space I'm going to highlight, that is where the two attack lines overlap. Now you're going to ask, why? Well, the simple reason is our opponent can only block one of the two attack lanes in the green area I've circled there. Which means if you can get that set up and your opponent doesn't have any areas where you have to block, you've essentially won the game, and that's conceptually what we're trying to do. Let's go take a look at another two examples here. Okay, here's the second example. In this one, I'll circle the first attack line, I've circled the second attack line. Basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to set up two attack lines where the points overlap, and we get the green space right there, which I've highlighted, and basically we want to build an attack line up through there where our opponent can only block one of the two attack lanes, and if we can do that, we've essentially won the game. Okay, this is the last of our third conceptual examples. As you can see, I've highlighted one possible attack line in red up there. I'm also going to highlight another attack line in red. It's diagonal and intersects it. Now if you look at the two spots where the red are on top of each other, I'm going to circle in green there. That is what we're looking to set up. We're looking to set up a spot where we have two game-ending squares, and our opponent can only block one of these two moves. If we can do that, we've essentially won the game, and obviously the object of the game is to get 4 in a row, and that's what we're trying to do here. Now we're going to go take a look at a live game example of how we would actually accomplish this in practice. Okay, in this live game example, we're going to be playing as green, which means we are the first to move, and our opponent is red, so our opponent is second to move. That is us right there. Our first move is going to be in the 4 spot, or right in the middle, because we want to control the center. Now our opponent's going to actually counter here with the center spot as well. Since usually controlling the center is best, we're going to move in the middle again in the 4 spot, and at this point we're going to pause and look at pivot points. Now you're probably asking, what are pivot points? Well, let's take a look. Okay, pivot points are essentially where two attack lines overlap. I'm going to circle one attack line we have there in green. I'm also going to circle a second attack line we have in green where we can get 4 in a row, and here is a third attack line in green. So we have two different spots where there's an overlap. I'm going to circle a 2 there. There's where two attack lines overlap, and now the number 3 I wrote there, that's where two other attack lines overlap, and those are our pivot points on the right side of the board. I've circled in black, and that's where our attack lines overlap, and that gives us a 2-for-1 special. The same also holds true for the right side of the board, which I've circled there, and if our opponent gives us any spots like that, we want to try to take advantage of it. Okay, at this point our opponent, red, chooses the 3 square, which actually gives us an opportunity to hit one of the pivot points, which we do. Now that we've hit the pivot point, we've given our opponent some problems. Our opponent decides to go in the 2 square, red there, and our best move is to hit one of the pivot points, which is open up top, so we hit the point where 2 lines oversect. At this point we have a pretty good attack, and we've essentially sealed off the number 2 square, which I've highlighted in black there, from our red opponent. If our opponent moves there, we just move on top of that in the 2 square, and we've essentially hit one of the concept traps I was talking about earlier. Our opponent doesn't do that. Our opponent actually moves on top in the 3 square right there. Now we decide to move in the 4 spot there. Several reasons. One, we want to control the center, and two, we want to set up a trap to end the game. If you see the 1 square right there I've circled, our opponent is going to have to move there or the game is going to end shortly, because we can force him to block in the 2 square, and essentially if we force him to block in the 2 square, we'll get the setup we were trying to get earlier, and I'll show you that here. Now our opponent actually decides to move in the center, red right there in top, and we go ahead and hit the 1 spot. Now the part I've circled is the part where red has to move, otherwise we win the game, because we'll have 4 in a row right there, and that's basically red's only move. Red does make that move, and we go on top of that and we set up an unblockable attack line here, and I'll highlight that for you. Okay, I've highlighted the first one here, and I'm also going to highlight the second way we can make 4 in a row. As you can see, I'm going to circle in black here the 2 ways we can make 4 in a row. Now, as I've stated earlier, our opponent can only block 1, and we've essentially won the game. Red decides to actually move in the 2 spot. We move in the 1 spot. Now, red's going to come back and block here, but that's not going to be good enough, because we can make 4 in a row just by moving in the 1 spot right there, which we do, and we make 4 in a row. Now conceptually this is it seems simple, but it takes a little practice, and if you practice at it enough and you understand the concept, you should be able to win a lot more games, as long as you remember to pay attention on defense and watch out for early game traps.